fortunate enough to be a part of the virtual railroad hobby show. And Drew, have you ever been to the show up in Massachusetts?
I actually haven't. I'm sorry.
You haven't yet? All right,
No.
that needs to be on your bucket list.
Absolutely.
That is the largest show that we do every year. It's about 400,000 square feet in 4 buildings. And if you can dream it, it's usually there. Mm-hmm. And this year it was virtual, of course. So we were the Keystone sponsor and had 3 opportunities. And on Saturday evening, a little over a week ago, we announced the museum quality SDL 39, mm-hmm. which is a really unique locomotive, especially if you're a Milwaukee modeler. It's a 6-axle locomotive essentially in a 4-axle body, and brought a lot more lighting effects to it than any locomotive we've done to date. And also, of course, being museum quality as the frog clank and the curved squeal sound.
Cool. So lighting functions, even I've talked to quite a number of manufacturers who say that that's one of their biggest limits that they face. Have you guys kept within that stereotypical 12 function range, or have you had to figure out a way?
It's been a real challenge. Sometimes we have to have logic actually written in that controls some of the lighting functionality. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons that when we first started the company, there was no OEM type board that we could go out and get where it would give us all the type of light functions we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons we worked with ESU, is because they could help design a motherboard that would have some logic on it that would allow us to do all the lighting functions. I think on the SDL 39, there's right around 30 LEDs in the locomotive.
Cool. That's really impressive. I mean, there's manufacturers out there who really strive for that, but you can tell that I've seen personally models, I don't want to name anybody, but I got one and there were holes in the tooling for it, but there was nothing there. So I guess good on you for finding a way.
Yeah, that's one of the things is we're pushing the limits every time, mm-hmm. but that's what keeps you at the forefront of the industry.
Absolutely. So what makes you choose things to bring to museum quality? Because there has to be so many people who email you saying, do this, do that. And it's obviously a big project to take on, which is why you aren't pumping them out.
Well, boy, that's a great question, because, when we first started, the first locomotive we did at museum quality was the 3-unit big blow turbine. Mm-hmm. And we wanted that to be a really groundbreaking flag planting type locomotive to say, hey, this is what we can do. And at that time, nobody was really doing ground lights or class lights that you could cycle between red, white, green, and off. Or, there was no cab lights or instrument panel lights, nighttime lighting, things like that. And so over the last about 6-7 years, the world's kind of transitioned, and a lot of those things are becoming standard fare, whether that be ground lights or walkway lights. And so it's getting harder and harder to differentiate museum quality from a feature standpoint. Mm-hmm. But since the beginning, the tagline's been legendary locomotives. And so the idea really is to find some of the more signature type locomotives that are unique but have a pretty special place in history. And I think you'll see museum quality kind of evolve into that area. There are some new technologies we're working on that we'd like to incorporate into museum quality, but they're still early, so I'm not quite sure if that'll happen in the next locomotive or not.
Wow. And one thing that I've always admired about scale trains is that other manufacturers, who I think anybody who listens to this is going to recognize, but I'm not going to name, they try to pioneer, but what really happens is they short out everything and everybody needs to order 5 replacement decoders. With you guys, that's absolutely not the case. And I think you might just be one of a handful of manufacturers out there who try to do something different, and it achieves every single time. I mean,
that's very nice of you to say. We really strive to bring the best models that we possibly can to market. We're never going to be perfect. The good Lord didn't make us that way, but we're going to do the best we can to give our customers the best model possible.
Absolutely. And let me try to pull up the page here. So for the SDL 39s, could I ask what made you choose that specific locomotive?
SDL 39 is that's actually been in process with us since almost the beginning of the company. So we started the company in 2014. I think we probably picked this project in 15 and acquired the drawings in like late 15, early 16, the engineering for the prototype. It was one that we'd seen a lot of requests for. We track just about everything. So whether it's an email that comes into us, a Facebook post, we also, we still watch the forums, but they're not as quite as in play as today as Facebook groups are. We watch the market a lot and see what the common requests are and actually track it. We have a spreadsheet with literally thousands of requests, and we'll track who requested it and how many times. And that way, we can find out, is it one guy that's requested it 50 times, or is it 50 different guys that have requested it once? Kind of gives you a barometer on how much the market's asking for it. And the SDL39 was one of those projects, kind of like the C39-8.
Well, I guess that gives you an idea. When you email the company, it's not just going into a black pit. It really does matter. It
really does. I mean, coming from the past history that we have in the industry, we used to try to do surveys at our previous company, but there's just not enough of a market sample to really give you that. And it's pretty easy to sway a survey. If you get a group of people who really want something, they can really influence it. And this way is more, I think it's a little more impartial, because you're taking a sampling from all over. Even like trade shows, when we're out doing shows, we're jotting down all that feedback and bringing it back and putting it into that database. So yeah, we're always tracking that information. And in fact, like right now, we have over 20 all new projects somewhere in the development pipeline. That's not including the MTH product that we just acquired. And then we also have what we like to affectionately call the bullpen. And those are projects that we'd like to do at some point. And there's probably over 50 projects on that list. And so we're continually collecting information, data. It's kind of like the SDL39. We started that project when we acquired the drawings, probably, I think it was in late 15, early 16. And then in 18, that project really got going in earnest. And then it took, a little over 2.5, 3 years to be able to get to the point where we got the samples that we're able to show at the time of announcement.
Wow. And that's great. You guys are that one company that after you announce a product, you immediately have a photo of the completely finished sample in like a scene, like it's all right there. You see exactly what you're going to get. And everybody else, you have this concept art, and at the bottom in strict changes, it said or in strict fine print, it says changes will be made. And you guys, you have, this is what you're going to get. This is what it does. And there's a reasonable price. And I mean, there you go.
One little piece of that though is the samples that we get are what we call decoration samples. So we get two sets. We get decoration samples, which are early samples, and then we'll get production when we're in production. And the reason that we do that is a lot of times on the deco samples, you'll see fine tweaks between the sample and then what's going to come out for production. For instance, like on the WC590, the SDL39, the shade of gold is the wrong shade. And we were able to get new photography and some other documentation to help support that. So we'll make a change to that color so it's more accurate in production.
Wow. So just the changes that you guys make on that kind of stuff. I have the SDL39 page up right now. All the tooling it requires, I'm looking at least 70 bullet points. I don't know if that's an accurate number, but all the prototype specific things that you guys are doing, functions and detail wise, is that a significant amount of tooling cost increase, or is that kind of do you guys eat that cost, or?
Well, we bake it into the price of the locomotive. Some of the feedback we received on the SDL39, we've had some folks say, boy, I wish that was in rivet counter. And I think that's because people believe that if it was, it would be less expensive. When in reality, if it was a rivet counter locomotive, it would probably still be the same price. The thing about the SDL39 is, from a sales unit standpoint, it's going to be, by the way, it's doing much better than we anticipated. We're already almost at our projection number, but it'll probably be 50%, maybe a little bit less of what maybe the first run of the ES44 is going to be, or the ET44, or the SV40-2. And so you have to amortize that cost across a lower quantity of product. And because of that, that makes the price go up. And you'll see that on the unique models because you're just not shipping enough to be able to maintain a lower price point.
So would you say that so far in sales projections and stuff, with this SDL39, now that you guys have spread out more into a larger chunk of the manufacturers out there, have you sold more of the SDL39s in this phase of pre-orders than you did with the turbines, or is it comparable?
It's not really comparable. I think from an apples and orange standpoint. I mean, you're looking at a locomotive with a big low turbine that the first run I think was about $725 was the selling price for museum quality. Here you're looking at a locomotive that's half that price. Mm-hmm. So you're limiting the market because of the price point.
That's true.
When it's all said and done, I think the quantities will be pretty similar to each other between the two locomotives for the first production run. But the good thing there is, we based all of our budgets on a lower quantity. So what that allows us to do is the SDL39 from the initial projections might have paid our bills for half a month. Mm-hmm. And now with the numbers, I think we're going to see when it's all said and done, we're going to be able to pay the company's bills for a month and have a little bit of money left over so we can take and plow that money back into whether it's a building expansion or new tooling or more employees or that kind of thing. So it'll end up being a good project for us.
Very cool. So then before we move on, is there anything else you want to say about the SDL39 or can we move on to MTH?
The SDL39 project, I would encourage folks, to place a pre-order. We use pre-orders to judge how many units that we're going to purchase. And we'll order a quantity above the pre-orders. And, depends on the product. If it's something that we don't have high expectations for, we might only order to the nearest case. If it's something that does really well, we might order 50% or more above pre-order projections. So right now, I think on this one, we'll probably order about 10 to 20% over the pre-order quantity. But the one thing that will happen is we continue to take pre-orders after the pre-order deadline. And a lot of times, I wish we had a perfect crystal ball, right? Mm-hmm. I expect these will probably they'll sell out pretty quickly after delivery. So if somebody's kind of on the fence, I would jump in now. We plan on a second run. We'll do some different paint schemes and some different variations. That'll probably happen sometime in late 22. And then after that, I would expect this tooling to rest for a few years just because of its uniqueness.
You guys have acquired the MTH, HO, and SCAL tooling. I have some opinions about MTH, but I think you guys are going to do so much mercy to it, and it's going to be some of the best stuff out there. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, that's a huge compliment and a lot of faith in us. We're pretty excited about it. Probably some of the biggest requests we get are, when are we going to do our first steam locomotive? When are we going to do passenger cars? Are you ever going to expand beyond locomotives and freight cars and a few vehicles? And this really helps broaden the market for us in HO. A full steam locomotive lineup right out of the gate with some of the most popular steam locomotives out there, things like 4449 and mm-hmm. The SP locomotive, NW 611. You got the big boy and the Challenger. So it really helps kind of catapult us into the steam category. And we're already developing our own steam locomotive as well. So
that was a question I was going to ask. Yeah, I was wondering about that.
So that's in the works. I mean, we're probably a solid 2 years away from being able to announce that locomotive. But it's definitely in the works. And the other neat thing too is we acquired, as part of the acquisition, MTH had engineered or designed and also came up with a bill of materials for there's probably about 15 or 20 different projects, mostly steam era, both steam locomotives and freight cars and passenger cars. Mm-hmm. And so we're going through that now. We'll actually take that product and make sure that it meets rivet counter standards. And it's actually pretty well done. There's one freight car that has like 11 different versions already created in the design phase. So making it rivet counter won't be that much of a leap. Mm-hmm. And we're actually in the process of going through those now, prioritizing, and you'll see those over the next several years become additions to the product lineup. And then of course, S-Scale is another I think a lot of people were surprised at us jumping into S. We've always seen an opportunity there. And I think the opportunity might be more coming from the perspective of, HO guys like myself that are aging. Our eyesight's not what it used to be, but yet we still want the scale appeal. And I could really see some opportunities to grow the S scale category. We're going to start, of course, with the product that's already there and see what the market's like. And then from there, maybe we'll invest in some new tooling and hopefully grow that market.
Great. I mean, to me, S scale has always been kind of like, see it a bit on trainworld.com, or when you see it at train shows, it's more just like a little toyish display. But I think you guys are going to develop that into like a big domination over that and grow it, hopefully,
Yeah, time will tell. I'll tell you, the S community is really excited. It's unbelievable how many phone calls, emails, messages that we've received over the past week or so of support and wanting to help. And I hope we can live up to the excitement that the S scale community has. I think it's going to be a long road, and we probably won't see our first products until sometime in 22, but we'll get there.
I had 2 MTH models over the years. One of them was an ES44 that had a short circuit when it got here after a couple days, and it came with busted front handrail, like completely off in the box. I got a J-Class 611, comes short out of the box. I'm hoping that you guys can take that tooling and make it better electronics inside, because people I hear love MTH, they love the smoke, they love the look, but the electronics, they're just awful.
Well, our plan is to move to ESU, and we're already working with ESU on creating a new motherboard so that we can make sure we have all the lighting effects, and that the ESU decoders will fit in the locomotives and give us all the lighting functions we expect, the sound functions, the smoke, those kind of things. So and we're also going to be putting our motor in the locomotives, and we'll do a ton of testing. We'll make sure that everything works the way it should. And talk about the service side of the house, we do fall short from time to time. And no matter how hard you try, there's going to be times when things just aren't going to go the way you hoped. And we have a full-time service center here. We've got Mark, who answers the phones and emails, Wade, who does repairs, also Brendan, who backs up on parts and sometimes repairs. So we've got a team of people, and we're pretty quick at turning things around. I think our turnaround right now is about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And so we get it product in, get it fixed, and get it back out whenever we do drop the ball.
I'm just hearing you say 2 to 3 weeks is a long time. That's a lot quicker than most of the people out there. So
yeah, we'd like it to be sooner, honestly, but there's that balance between staffing and costs and all those things. But we keep a close eye on it, and Wade is awesome at repairs, and he works actually for us part-time. When we do get a little bit behind, he'll work an extra day or two to get us caught back up.
Cool. So back to MTH, you have all this tooling. Do you plan on modifying any of it, or is it just kind of grab and go?
No real plans to do any major tooling changes. I know there's been a lot of speculation out on the Facebook groups and forums, and that we're going to bring everything up to rivet counter standards. And really financially, that doesn't make any sense. Coming from the company that we came from, we were part of the acquisition of the Tower 55, ES44, and SD78 tooling, the front range GP7 and 9 tooling, and trying to turn that into Genesis product. By the time those two projects were done, there really wasn't much left of the original tooling, or what was substantially modified, and the cost was way greater than if we had just started from scratch. So, if we really wanted a rivet counter level SD78, it would make more sense to tool it from scratch. So we'll probably come up with a new brand, I think, is where we may end up, or possibly some of the products, especially the diesel locomotive line, will end up either a new brand or in the operator brand. The steam tooling is really rivet counter. It could be maybe have a few changes, but once again, when you get into that road number, road name, era specific detail, suddenly it really changes the game and costs a lot more to modify that tooling. And oftentimes it's cheaper and faster just to start over.
Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things, the rumors I've been hearing on the Facebook groups, is that you guys are considering, and I can absolutely guess this is based on no fact, super detailing some of the MTH steam locomotives.
I don't see us going beyond where they are right now. We're definitely taking feedback. Some folks have given us some specific feedback on certain locomotives that they didn't feel like were quite accurate or even close to being accurate in what they feel like needs to be done. Mm-hmm. If a locomotive is pretty far away from being accurate, we may never bring it back. If we can make some tooling changes at a low cost, we may, but I wouldn't bank on it. And if we do, we'll definitely market those tooling changes. It's just from an economic standpoint, it doesn't make sense to buy the brand and then essentially start over from scratch. You want to turn around and recover your investment and then turn a profit so you can plow that profit back into new projects.
So there's the tooling part of it. Did you get the patents that they had for the steam technology, I guess you'd call it? Did you get the paint diagrams? Like, did any of that carry over, or was it just the tooling?
Mainly what we acquired is the tooling, the hard tooling for die cast and plastic. There are some artwork that we've acquired. There's all the engineering drawings that were used to create the original models, the bill of materials, some research material that supported those projects. I think there were like about 150,000 documents that we received in the acquisition. Pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I think we've moved like 600 pieces of tooling already. So there's a lot to go through. Mm-hmm. But, we didn't acquire the customer list or, we'll have to recreate like the stamping tooling, the side rods for the steam locomotives. Some of the metal parts didn't come across. That was done in Korea, and shipping those tools into China really doesn't make sense. China likes to export but doesn't like to import, and they'll hit you pretty heavily with fees, taxes, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So there's the tooling, the paint. So if you were to put one of these into production today, would it just be so first of all, if it were a steam locomotive, you'd have to make the driving rods, you'd mm-hmm. have to redo all the paint, you'd have to pick the shades, you'd have to do all the lettering. Mm-hmm. And so that would, people think on Facebook that it's grab and go and you should just be pumping these out, but it's so much more than that.
But I wish it was that simple. I mean, it'd be great if it was. Some of the things we have to do is 600 pieces of tooling. You really have to, and I think it might even be more than, I think when it's all said and done, it'll be more than that. You have to go through all that tooling and make sure that what you've purchased is there. So you have to verify it. Mm-hmm. You also have to, and that's number one. And then secondly, you have to prioritize it, because all that tooling is going to have to be hung in a tool and shot. The molding is done to make sure it works the way you expect it to. Then you're certainly not going to do all the projects at one time. You're going to, so I think probably early on, you'll see the 611, you'll see 4449, and we'll go through all that tooling, make sure that it works the way we expect it to. The plastic flows, it works in our machines, and then we'll have to recreate artwork and essentially start from scratch. And if there's colors that we need, we'll have to go find those colors. We'll probably have to come up with new documentation to support, to make sure that we've got photography of 611 or whatever it might be, showing where the numbers go and the lettering goes and the fonts and all those kind of things. And that's just part of it. Mm-hmm. The other piece of that puzzle is we are out right now. We have production scheduled through about April, May of 22. And when the factory returns from Chinese New Year here in about 10 days or so, we'll lock down through production through the end of 22. And then the other thing that we have is you have your engineers who do all your design work. You've got your tool maker, and of course our own product development team. All those capacities are booked about well, all the way through 22 at this point.
Wow.
So now we either have to hire more people, which is happening. We're hiring another design engineer in China, which starts after Chinese New Year, another project manager. We're adding to our product development team. And of course, you got to get all those folks trained too, right? They have to know how we do business. And so as those additional resources come online, that'll give us more capacity to help push product through more quickly. And that way, I would imagine, my hope would be by the end of this year, we'll make our first announcements, and that we'll see the first products probably in mid 22.
And I'm excited. I can't wait to get my hands on 611, the one that's short out from MTH. I'm holding the same tooling, but it's a lot better now, you know?
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Well, good. Well, we're looking forward to getting that to you.
So, Rapido has made their own factories in China, which has allowed them to pump out volume at like exponentially faster. Do you guys are making changes like that, but are you planning on trying to open your own factory, or do you have things or connections over there that allow you to still move at the same rate?
Well, first of all, we can't own a factory in China. You have to have a Chinese national as a principal owner in a factory. You can own partial.
Oh, okay.
But you definitely can't own the entire factory. That being said, we have a long-standing relationship with our factory owner, and a great relationship. He's been to our home, our other owners' homes. We go fishing when he comes here to the States, and we've been to his home in China, and we know his family. He knows our family. So we've got a great relationship with our factory. And we share a lot of information, probably more than we should. We share a lot of our financial information. We want him to know that we're healthy, and that, that they can rely on us to pay our bills, as that's important.
Yeah.
And as we book production capacity and tooling capacity and engineering and all those things, we want them to know that we're just as committed to them as they are to us. So I don't really see us investing in a factory in China, just because we have such a great working relationship with our current factory, and building a new factory from scratch. I was at Athearn when we moved production from California to mainland China, and starting a new factory is painful. There's a lot of quality issues. There's a lot of training issues. Helping a factory build models at the level that we are now, if you think about how far like Athearn Genesis has progressed since the first products went to China, we're at that level now. And man, I think starting a new factory would be a lot of heartaches. It took us probably a solid year to 18 months to really get the factory where we were comfortable with quality control and getting consistent deliveries. Not deliveries, I'm sorry, consistent quality. There's still hiccups, but the disadvantages far outweigh the advantages at this point for us.
Well, and it makes a difference too that you have that relationship with your factory, because it seems like some of these manufacturers just send the order off send that book of, I don't know what it's called. You have the book that.
Yeah, we send, you've got a research, we call it a research package that goes over for like a new project. And then we send over what we call artwork, and the artwork has all the information for like colors. And one thing we do that's different that we hadn't done in the past is every version of model that you see. So like the SDL39, I think there's about 8 different versions, and it can be subtle little things like some of the Sioux line. One of the versions has knuckle coupler, the knuckle holders on the fuel tank on the front. That one detail change requires an entire new drawing. And so what we do then is that drawing gets referenced, and that drawing has all the parts associated with that specific model. So then we render the art then on that particular drawing. So that way we don't have to worry about what detail goes on it. The main thing we have to worry about is placement of, all the lettering, the logos, the data labels, warning labels, that kind of thing, and then making sure we get the colors right.
Exactly. And so you send that book off, and some manufacturers, it seems like they just send the book off and wait for them to come. But you guys had that relationship with your factory, and you've made the videos, again, being very transparent in how everything's manufactured. You visited China and you made the videos showing how everybody how everything gets made, and one is still to come, correct?
Yes, sure is. Drayton's wrapping up now. It's kind of like Star Wars. It's how model trains are made, part one instead of part two, and it pretty much follows the ES44 development. And you'll see everything from the ES44 tooling and process all the way up until announcement timeframe. And I got to be honest, I thought I had a pretty good idea of how things worked. And I learned a lot, even on that trip, about how like some of the tooling is created and what the factory goes through to make sure the tooling will work, and how things are ejected out of the mold and plastic flows and all those things. So cool. I think it'll be a great education for folks to really learn how much time, effort, and energy we put into it and our factory puts into it to try to bring the best possible models.
Absolutely. The one thing I've always wondered about tooling is, in my head, there were a couple molds so things could go faster, but is it correct that there's just one? So for a production of, say, 600 of the same variant, all 600 went through that one mold?
No, there's actually multiple molds to make up a particular model.
For like the individual part.
For the individual part, okay.
Yeah.
So yes and no. And the reason I say that is to make an economies of scale, cutting hard steel is really expensive. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times one of the things you'll see in the video is they lay out part sprues. And it's just like if you've ever built a plastic model car, there'll be things on that sprue that will be used for a particular production. There'll be things that won't be, and those parts will either be saved or they'll be ground up and used for to be molded again. And and what's on that mold sprue, it could be anything. The factory's going to try to get the best economy of scale when it comes to molding, because the molding part is pretty inexpensive. And so if you have to regrind or save the part, it's not a big deal. It's the actual creation of the tooling that's expensive. So you want to try to minimize the number of tools. And the other big thing that happens too is you have what are called inserts. And what an insert is, kind of a great example on the SDL 39. If you look at the fireman's side on the nose, there's a vent for a heater. And there's also one on the engineer's side on the cab, like down by where the engineer's feet would be. Well, that was actually later in life, on the second grouping, they took that vent off. So it's totally flush. You could see that you can't tell it was ever there. Mm-hmm. And then later in life, they took the ones that had the vent and they plated them over. So there's like what would be essentially a metal plate. Well, that then requires 3 different inserts into the tool. One, the nose and the long hood are integral to each other. Mm-hmm. So there'll be one set of inserts for that piece. And then for the cab, because it's a separate part, there'll be 3 sets of inserts for that, just to make sure that we can do those 3 variants on that vent.
And so for the MTH tooling, kind of an odd change of subject, have you noticed that tooling has the same kind of specific variations, or is that more streamlined as far as put the name on the body shell and call it out?
I think MTH is a little underappreciated by modelers from the standpoint. It is, I think, more road specific than most people believe. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not the level of rivet counter, but you look at things like the Dash 9s. You got high headlights for NS. Same thing with the ES44. Mm-hmm. You look at things like there's some different dynamic brake variants. There's some different cab variants. So they're there. They're just not nearly at the depth of a rivet counter locomotive. Yes, so we also announced for the N-scale market, the Multimax auto rack, which is a modern auto rack like 2014 to today. That's been a really highly requested model for us. And we get a lot of requests from N-scale, and we took a little break at N-scale while we kind of got our arms around the scale, but I think there's like 4 or 5 locomotives in development right now, and probably 3 or 4 freight cars. So we've got a lot more N-scale coming over the next few years. And then we just announced our second Kit Classics freight car, which is the Burlington Havelock Shops gondola. And then later this year, another HO locomotive for sure. Probably an N-scale locomotive if we can get everything pulled together. I would expect to see probably a couple of more HO freight cars this year and possibly one N-scale freight car. So a lot in the pipeline for this year, even more for next year. And as we add capacity, I think we'll be able to bring more product to market faster between all of the scales and all of the eras. Probably the number one question is, when are you coming with your first 4-axle? And of course, we acquired a few 4-axles in the MTH acquisition, but our first 4-axles in tooling now. And so if all goes as planned, and here's your scoop, Drew, I haven't told anyone this.
Oh. If
all goes as planned, it will be announced this year.
Great. I can make a clickbaity title on this video.
Yeah,
MTH announces new locomotive.
It won't be under the MTH label. It'll be a return locomotive.
I said MTH, didn't I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. Some of these questions that I like to ask everybody that probably are a little bit, what is this? What is that? What is your most successful? And then also, what is probably your most underperformed product that you've released?
That's a good question. So I think the ET44, the Tier 4 GO, has been our most successful locomotive. And then on the freight car side, it's going to be the Gunderson 5188 covered hopper. For least successful, probably the N-scale carbon black covered hoppers. Boy, we lost our shirt on that project. But hey, that's the business, right? You win some, you lose some.
So for your layout, or even if you don't specifically go to build a layout for your collection, are there things in it that aren't specifically scale trains or Athearn? Because I know you've been a big part of Athearn. Are other manufacturers a big part of your fleet? Oh yeah, absolutely. I've got Exactrail products, like Tangent, Rapido. Gosh, I know there's a lot more in the basement, but yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where no manufacturer is going to make every product that you want. And if you're going to model in a specific time frame or a specific railroad, and to me, as long as the product is at a higher end, I'll buy it. And as long as it fits my era and my railroad. Happens a lot in the UK, and it doesn't really happen at all in the US. Would you consider collaborating with another manufacturer, such as Rapido or such as Athearn, that matches your level of detail? I don't know about collaboration. Well, actually, we have. If you go back in time, the Trinity 31K tank car that we did with the head shields, we did that project in HO and then worked really closely with Craig at BLMA. Our factory actually we took our engineering and our factory scaled it down to N and did that project with Craig. We've also, we have a really large library. So we've got probably 750,000 images on the server currently, tons of builders drawings, paint and lettering diagrams. We've been known to share that information with other manufacturers. The SDL39, the builders drawings came from Matt at Fox Valley on that project. So, we've worked with other manufacturers and some are very trustworthy and you can really count on them. I know that you're a big fan of Jason at Rapido, and Jason and I, in 2014, we were on a train ride, and first time I'd ever ridden in first class, and that was on Via, going from Ottawa down to Toronto to spend a few days with Jason. That was my last trade show, and actually rolled out the company to him on the train and what our plans were, and showed him the business plan and wanted to get his thoughts, and he was really awesome about that. Folks like that who make awesome product, and Jason,
when they worked on their 4-axle US locomotive, he contacted me, wanted to know if that was a project that we were working on. It was on our to-do list, but it wasn't something we were going to get to anytime soon. So it's like, you guys run with it. And there's another project. We said we'll take this other project, and if it's still down the road, but if you guys are going to get to it at some point, let us know, and we'll let you know where we're at. So we had some conversations. We worked. We were visiting with Atlas on the SD60E and N-Scale. We were kicking the tires on that project, and there's some other great folks out there. Tangent and the Exact Rail team, and there's others. So it's a small industry. We all know each other. Mm-hmm. We all see each other at trade shows, and so it's great. You make a lot of friends that way.
And another question that's been circulating all over Facebook, not just specifically for scale trains, but there's a lot of European people connecting to the American people over Facebook who want to mm-hmm. wonder if the American producers are going to start making some European stuff.
Boy, it's not on our short list. There's some tooling that we acquired in the MTH acquisition that we'll need to figure out, kind of how we're going to do it. But we see there's just so many opportunities in the North American market. Yeah. And that's really where our expertise is. If we were to branch out to other areas of the world, we'd really need someone on our team that knows that world, knows the prototype, mm-hmm. And with all the irons that we have in the fire right now, it's definitely not on our short list, but I wouldn't say it's something that we wouldn't ever do.
Moving on to more Facebook questions, what do you think would be the soonest you would rerun the big blow turbine museum quality?
Next run of museum quality turbines will be announced, I think, this spring.
Oh wow! I didn't think you were gonna have just a set out date for it. I thought it was gonna be like far in the future.
No, it's amazing to us. There's very few products that either when we were at Athens or here that just continue to sell regularly, and both the HO turbine, HOs especially, but even the N-scale turbine have legs that allow the sales to continue. So we'll do another rerun at 18, 26, and 30. 18 is the one at Union at the Illinois Railway Museum. Then you've got 26, which is at the Ogden Museum in Utah. 30 is the one with the unique air intakes on the B unit. We'll rerun those, and then we'll do some new road numbers. And believe it or not, Drew, we have people, and I'm just stunned by this, that want to collect all 30 road numbers in museum quality. And they send us photos of their collection, and it's just unbelievable. Very thankful for those folks. And we'll get to it. Eventually, we'll do all 30 road numbers. And there'll be a few guys that have every single road number, which is amazing.
Wow. I don't know where they get that money from, but I want some.
Yes, it amazes me too.
So that museum you worked with, and I forget the road, 32 maybe? It could easily be 29.
18 and 26. 18 and 26.
I'm sorry. So the museum you worked with, and you donated 18 and 26, some kind of percentage of the profits to the museum.
Right.
So
yeah, one of the hallmarks of our company, and this has been from our first business plan that we wrote back in 2013, is to give back. And part of that is whether it be within our industry, or we also have charities that we give to on a regular basis. And we don't normally share a lot about that. That's really between us and God, and that's the spirit of giving. On the turbines, that was pretty public. We, between the two museums so far, have donated over $40,000 to both, or together to both. And what's pretty amazing there is they're using that as seed money at IRM to help. They're hoping to get a covering over the locomotive to help protect it from the sun. And then at Utah, they were actually able to use that as seed money to repaint the entire locomotive. Wow. And so that'll help with the preservation of both of those. I think it's pretty well known too that for like the CSX Pride in Service locomotives, we worked really closely with CSX on that project. And our commitment to them for the access that they gave us is that we will be making a donation back to the 5 charities, that are on the side of the locomotives. And I'll give you a little scoop here too. We'll announce later this week. The 5 charities will be donating $5,000 a piece, so that'll be a $25,000 donation that we'll be sending out here in the next week to fulfill our commitment on that project. So, and there's a lot more that we do. I won't get into the details on that, but a lot of stuff we do in the community. I think that's really important, both here in Tennessee and as well as in Southern California, where the rest of our team is.
Absolutely. No, I reached out to the best source of questions for the model railroading community, which is the Fans of a Modeler's Life podcast Facebook group.
Yeah, good old Lionel Strang. He's a good guy.
So the first one we have is, would you ever consider making first generation Baldwin diesels?
Whew, man, let's get right to the point.
I know,
it's a hard question to answer. There's nothing. So the tough part is when you get into one of the reasons that you see a lot of the product that we've done be more, let's call it 70s forward. I wouldn't say it's modern, but it's 70s forward, maybe 60s forward. That's where the real holes in the market are. When you get pre-60s, there starts to be a lot more product in the marketplace. And folks like Bowser, I've got some Bowser equipment too. They make fantastic product. And they've covered that era pretty well. It's difficult to find something that's going to give you the production numbers that's going to help you recover your tooling costs and make a profit. And you kind of narrow the field when you get into the Baldwins. It's not to say never, but I can't see anything in the short term.
Cool. And then, so would you ever consider MTH steam is really kind of modern. That's not really a word you use to describe steam, but that's late steam. Yeah. Would you ever consider making some kind of early steam, like road switchery type things? That's the last would you make question, I promise.
Well, the USRA, and I don't mind answering these questions. We're just excited that people really want to buy our products and want us to come out with new things. That's very flattering. Maybe if we're talking about USRA steam locomotives, that's a possibility. If we're going way back, like things like an old 440, some of the maybe turn of the 1900s, turn of the century locomotives. I would say no time soon. When we were at Athern, we had the roundhouse line, and they had a lot of that turn of the century equipment, and sales on it were pretty marginal. And so when you look at the financial risk there's a lot of other places we could take a risk, and it would be a lot less risky, so to speak.
Well, that's another thing you're talking about, the profit margins on steam, which already compared to diesel and electric and the other stuff that exists really isn't as big. What do you project as the Scale Trains company? Do you expect to run into that roadblock, or do you think that you're advertising to an audience who's willing to kind of put more interest into it?
You're talking about the steam product?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I should have specified. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, the reason you see the later steam era products is those are the models that sell. The things that are going to live through the transition era, and where there's a lot of modelers, that gives you a bigger base to sell to. And honestly, with things like 4014, Big Boy 4014, and the Challenger 3985, or the CNO 2716, you name those locomotives that are out there today in excursion service, they have a built-in following even from a younger crowd. So I think the numbers there will be pretty strong. For us, we're going to make sure, and I think this is one of the hardest things to say. We're all modelers. The folks that started the company, 3 of us are model railroaders. One is more of a figures type modeler. And then we have a lot of modelers on staff. As much as we want to be modelers and make decisions as modelers, it's a business. And if we're going to, we're investing about $1 million a year in new tooling.
Wow.
And that's outside of the MTH acquisition. If we're going to continue to plow that kind of money into the company, then we have to be profitable. And we have 16 employees right now. We just hired our 17th today. There's some other news for you. They have families to support, and so we have to make sure that we're paying our bills and making payroll and taking care of them with their benefits and providing for them, and that's really important to us. So as much as it's a labor of love, it's a business, and we have to treat it that way.
So would you say that acquiring all that MTH tooling has saved money for the long run, or is it kind of just a expense that would have been the same?
It's definitely going to save money in the long run. I don't remember the exact number, but if we were to tool all the product that we purchased, it would be in the many millions of dollars. Wow. Brand new. And as tooling amortizes and it depreciates, you're not paying what the cost to recreate that tooling brand new would be. So I think we had a few steam locomotive projects out there where we covered the HO tooling investment pretty quickly, and then we got a few S scale projects out there. It won't take too long to recover that as well. So the great news is I think we'll be able to turn a profit on MTH sooner than later. And that profit will be able to just keep turning around and plowing into new projects. And, we're looking at a building expansion this year, and that helps those kind of things. And I think we'll probably add 3 or 4 more, actually at least 4 more new employees this year. Wow. So we'll probably hit 20 employees, and all those things help generate the capital needed to be able to continue growing the business.
Cool. Soon it's going to be like Amazon, and you're going to have next day repair. Send the scale trains mobile to your house. It'll be back tomorrow morning.
That would be pretty cool, but man, I don't see it as being that big. But we've been very blessed and are very thankful for the support of the modeling community. To be where we are today in just over 7 years, right at 7 years, is nothing short of a miracle.
Wow. Well, we have 2 more questions from the great AML network. Okay. I said, have any questions? And one person said, yeah, when's it going to start doing G scale? I don't think that's going to be soon.
No. We seriously looked at the MTHO line and the large scale line. And the opportunity was a good opportunity to get into large scale if we want to go down that path. But, coming from the company I actually came from Horizon Hobby, which was a wholesale distributor as well as a manufacturer with Athearn. And we sold all the major brands in large scale: Aristocraft, USA Trains, Bachmann. And through the years, we really saw that market. We saw the MTH stuff too there. We really saw that market decline. Wow. And it really shrank. I mean, it contracted tremendously over the years. And for the amount of investment and time and effort, we don't feel like that for us is not the right place to be right now.
Well, I guess that really brings up an important point that we didn't mention when we talked about the MTH tooling. What made you decide to buy that? Because forums everywhere were saying that was going to be lost and everything along the lines of that. And then you guys came out of the blue and you said, we have all this stuff. How'd that happen?
So I've known Mike Wolf for many years. When the announcement was made that they were planning to wind the company down and close at the end of, here in 21, I sent Mike a congratulatory message and really commended him on all the things that MTH had done over the years and what they brought to the industry, and wished him well in his retirement. And we started talking here, the 4 owners here, and it's like, man, there's a lot of great HO product there that would be really beneficial to our business. And then we've always seen an opportunity in S. We've talked about S since the beginning. We after a couple of days and some conversations, I'm like, well, why don't I just reach out to Mike and see if he's willing to sell off the HO product and maybe the S, but really the HO was what we were most interested in the beginning. And at that time, Mike, he wanted to sell the company as a whole. And I could understand that, right? He wants to sell and move on. But a few months passed. I think it was probably late August, early September. I just decided to shoot Mike another email and say, hey, I'm just wondering how things are progressing. If you think that somebody's going to take the whole company, or are you at a point where you'd be willing to talk about, selling off the HO product and possibly the S product? And the timing was right. I'll tell you what, that deal came together really fast.
Wow.
We came to an agreement on the HO probably within 2 weeks. It was fast. And we closed on the deal on December 31st. And that's when we took official possession of the tooling and the money exchanged hands. And then throughout that entire process, one of the reasons we took so long though is we seriously investigated the O line and the large scale line, but and it had come to a tentative agreement, but we really felt like we were biting off more than we could chew. We were really concerned that we might compromise our company just because of the financial commitment and the human resources we're going to need, the human capital, the people to make that thing happen. And so in the end, we decided we were biting off way more than we could chew. And one thing you'll find out about me is I'm pretty conservative when it comes to the business and would never do anything that I believe would jeopardize our employees' livelihoods. And so we stepped away, but came to an agreement on the HO and then the S, and made Mike an offer on the S and said, hey, if you don't sell the S, here's what we're willing to pay for it. And if you want to come back to us in the springtime and sell it to us after you've had a chance to see if you can sell it elsewhere for a higher price. And he came back and said, hey, you're taking the HO, if you'll, there were some things behind the scenes in the deal. He says, if you'll do these things, I'll sell it to you now. And it worked. So that all came together too.
A lot of people feel differently about traveling to different trade shows, and I don't want to say saying the same thing over and over again, but just always marketing your product. Do you feel that? Is that something that you really enjoy and get a kick out of, or is that something that you kind of burn out and you need to step away from it for a second?
It's been interesting not traveling for almost a year now. We do somewhere between 15 and 20 events a year. I'll attend probably 80 to 90% of those events when we travel. It's tough, from January, February, and March, I'm home 2 days a week for the better part of 2.5 months. And it's tough because the business continues and trying to keep up with everything, but I really enjoy it. When we go to some of the same places like Trade Fest in Milwaukee, or we go to the Railroad Hobby Show in West Springfield, you see the same people year after year, and you build relationships with those folks. And I've traveled so much between Athearn and Scale Trains that when we, whether we go back to the same city, even every so many years, whether that be Dallas, Texas, or Minneapolis, St. Paul, or anywhere in between, coast to coast, you get to know people, and you make some pretty good friends along the way, and you meet a lot of great people who want to help. I enjoy, we go to the RPM meets, and you talk to some of the really man, they make me look like an amateur with their knowledge on the prototype, and that's where you meet the experts, because we don't know everything. We'll be the first to admit it, and we never will. And we rely on a lot of people to help us be experts, and whether it be a particular railroad or even a railroad within a certain era, or some folks love certain locomotives or freight cars, and you have to have those experts, and you meet a lot of those people when you're out on the road. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I'm looking forward to traveling again, but boy, it sure has been nice to be home too.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and we're looking at some pretty unique things to be able to get out this summer. I really believe that we'll be back out this summer, whether that be at shows or we're really big on doing meet and greets where we go to a club and we share the story of how we got started, and then we show all the models that we have in production currently, and then we go and we run on the railroad and we play trains afterwards, which is kind of fun.
Wow.
Just to kind of unwind and hang out with people and answer questions just like we're doing here. I enjoy that a lot. And I really like meet and greets because it's more one-on-one. I think it's important that, sometimes, especially when we were at Athens, it was kind of people viewed us as a nameless, faceless company. And because they thought that it was this huge company, and it really wasn't. And I think it's important that people realize that we're real people. We pour our heart and soul to what we make, and we really try our best to make the best models that we can. But in the end, it's really rewarding and it's really refreshing, because a lot of times you hear in the emails that we receive or like product support, it's always the things that kind of go wrong. You don't always hear about the things that go right.
Yeah.
And being at shows, it's really refreshing because you're doing the right thing, because 99% of what you hear at the show is good and great feedback and complimentary. And I find it very uplifting and encouraging. And it helps to bring that back to the team and share that with the team, because it can be down, right? I mean, if you're in product support and most of what you get is when people have problems, and sometimes folks aren't the most respectful, which is kind of sad. But it can wear them.
That's what I mean. There is a lot of nameless, faceless companies, because I don't want to say any, but you think they're super big. And there's one or two who have reached out to you for an interview, and I kind of get this response which reflects on them as having like this super big corporate kind of business model. And then I look into it trying to find people to contact, and there's like 5 people who work there. And it's like, well, it's their own fault for that image.
Yeah.
Not always. Like Athern, of course, they're just big, but certain other companies.
You'd be surprised. I mean, Athern, I don't know what it is today, but when we worked there, the building in California, there were maybe a dozen people, maybe. And there was a lot of support team at Horizon, but it really wasn't nearly as large as most people from a people standpoint as folks thought Athern was.
So for 1 second, all those people who come up and say these bad things about your product or that you've heard from other people's product that are just completely like these nitpicky or unfounded things, what are some of the popular ones?
I'll tell you some of my favorites.
That's what I'm saying. So the things that are completely unfounded that people just always come up to you, or not, or the slime ballers always come up to you and they're trying to bring you down.
Probably the biggest thing, one of the ones that we get a lot, is color. And color can be very subjective, and also color renders differently from the prototype to the model. There's a couple of folks who hate our BNSF orange, and which is, I mean, the thing is, the paint, BNSF actually supplied the paint chip and had us color match it to it. You don't get any better than that. And so, there's a few folks who believe that orange is incorrect. And it's like, well, BNSF supplied the color. Yeah. If you can do better than that and prove that what BNSF supplied to us is not right, well, we'll take a look at it.
If you get the paint from them and they're saying the paint's wrong, I don't know.
And then the same thing, like there's a couple of folks that don't like our UP yellow, but we had a locomotive that was in the shop, was being repainted. We had the shop shoot the yellow, and we matched that yellow, and that was what to UP specs. So it's like, how can you be any more accurate, right? So, and the color is probably one of the more frustrating ones, because it can be so subjective, and we're always open to making our products better, but we have to have verifiable documentation. And we'll have people that'll say things like, well, that's not the way I remember it. And it's like,
did you check the photos?
Well, even photos really don't, photos are tough, because what light is it in? Is it in shadow? How long has it been on the railroad? Is it weathered? Um, how does that photo render? If what camera were you using? What were the settings? It's hard to make a color off, to go off a photo, or like if you're looking on screen on a computer, your settings can make that color render different.
Absolutely.
So, that's probably one of the big ones that just makes me shake my head sometimes. But there's other things, and product development has taught me that you never say always, and you never say never, because we've got experts who just will pound us that say, this never happened, and then we'll be like, well, here's a picture. And
just wait for the steam engines; they'll come pouring in.
Well, and we welcome the feedback, and we welcome documentation, right?
But only the feedback that has evidence.
Yeah, and I'll even say this too: if you come to us with feedback, man, I hope I'm not talking out of school here, but if you present it to us in a way that is respectful and helping us do better, that's great. But I'll tell you, these guys that beat us up, that berate us and talk down to us and treat us like we're idiots, boy, those emails are tough to read. And it's rough because it's like, hey, you know what? We're the first to say we don't know everything. And we rely on these guys. So, when we get that feedback, we really appreciate it when it's done in a way that's respectful.
But the other thing about that is you're a private company. They don't have to buy, because in reality, two people who are just slime balling everything that they can, it doesn't really matter if you lose them from your customer base. I mean, of course you want to keep them, but there's all those nice people out there who just can't wait to buy your stuff. So, I mean,
I appreciate that, and those are the folks that we really need to focus on. The problem is you have some folks that are really vocal on, social media gives everyone a platform. I'm more worried about the people who lurk on social media and read what these people have posted and form an opinion about us that might not be the right opinion. So that's what worries me, because there's way more people that are the silent majority than there are the folks that are vocal. And as long as we keep that silent majority happy, that's going to be the key.
Absolutely. And what you're saying, those people who develop those opinions, I think that's what YouTube especially, and then also Facebook, have given private creators like myself and companies like you the opportunity to show it's in my hand, take a look. Yep. And you're showing people they can form their own opinions, not from the one guy on Facebook, but from you holding it in your hand and presenting it in a way that's open and non-biased.
And that's why you touched on this earlier. One of the reasons that we had, key reasons, and this was in our first business plan too, is when we announce an all new model, you're going to be able to see it, touch it, hear it, and that way it's real and that it's going to come to fruition, that we've already invested all the money, and that way too that you can, there's time, and I encourage folks. We had one guy here recently come to us on something that we had photographs on the internet for 2 years, and he caught something that was a mistake, and really, kind of, I won't go into the depth there, but it's like, man, dude, come to us when we make the announcement, because then there's still time. We can make if somebody finds something on the SDL 39 right now, there's time to make changes. 6 months from now, there's no way to make changes without spending a lot of money. So,
well, I mean, maybe they're super rich and they're willing to make the investment, but who knows?
And we've done some crazy stuff. Somebody found an early mistake on the SD40-2 that probably 99.9% of people would never know. And we went back and spent $8,000 to fix it.
Wow. And Rapido, they had some kind of F unit. The lettering was wrong, so they got 100,000 shells and they switched them all out. So the things that manufacturers go through to ensure that everything comes to your house correct and accurate.
We try. We always try. Yep, absolutely.
And then, so one more time, could we give the AML Nation some more attention?
Sure.
We have, I promise this is the last person who says, will you make something? Our SP AC9's a possibility.
Southern Pacific AC9 steam locomotive. That would be pretty darn cool.
Does MTH make that?
No. They make the cab forward. This is how do you describe it?
I can just look it up.
It's a cab forward in reverse. So normally the cab forward has the cab at the front. The AC9 is essentially the same locomotive, but the cab is at the rear, like a traditional steam locomotive. I'll go this far. That is on our list of possibilities. It's one of the many steam locomotives on our list.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. And then, what size are the Stay Alives in your rivet counter series? Big.
Oh boy.
They're big.
Yeah, I mean there are two large super capacitors. I don't know what the ratings are on the two, but you'll be able to, when you take the locomotive off the track, if you've got a DCC and sound locomotive, it'll run for about 4 to 6 seconds. So if you've got a dead spot on your railroad, it's definitely going to bridge that gap long before the capacitors discharge.
So unless your track is super rusty, you should be fine.
Yeah, or needs a big cleaning. Yeah, you shouldn't have any problems.
Roughly how long before we see former MTH models released are they planning to release them in any specific order? We answered the first part, but then are you planning to release them in any specific order?
Still working through that. We owe the factory a complete priority list when they get back from Chinese New Year, which is in about 2 weeks. And we'll have all that formalized by then.
Cool. And then, is it safe to assume that the MTH models that are redundant to the scale trains line, like the Gevo and Dash 9, will not be used?
I wouldn't say that. We've kicked around a couple of possibilities, making those operator models or potentially creating another brand. The SD70 Ace opens up a lot of possibilities in special paint schemes, and it's those kind of things that I think the one thing people miss is there is a market for those locomotives. It's not the rivet counter customer, and we know that, but there are folks who appreciate a well done model, but it doesn't have to be at the rivet counter level. So when you produce those locomotives, once again, it comes, and I keep using the profit word, it comes back to generating revenue and profit, and you use that profit to plow into more rivet counter projects.
Cool. And then the last question, I promise, is if you could produce any locomotive, period, without worrying about cost, what would it be?
This is me personally. And I'm going to put that disclaimer on it. Okay. And I'm also going to say that we are not doing this locomotive. Please don't start that rumor.
Emails are going to pour in.
I would love to do, and this is probably one you're going to have to look up. I'd love to do the Chicago and Eastern Illinois Dixie Flagler Pacific Streamline locomotive. And it's a pretty unique. My dad worked for the CNI Railroad, and this was one of their flagship steam locomotives that pulled their passenger trains. And I was a member of a club years ago called the Danville Junction chapter out of Rossville, Illinois. And I was always fascinated by the pictures of that locomotive and would love to have one in my personal collection. But unfortunately, the cost to create that thing and the sales probably.
Well, it depends how many emails you get.
It would take a lot of emails to make that steam locomotive, but it's darn cool. I'd just love to have that for me personally.
I mean, you said 50 emails earlier got somewhere, so we can try to get 51.
Yeah, but the thing is, those folks can send an email, but when it comes time to pony up the money, there's the key.
So, final question, I promise, for the second time.
That's okay.
If you could get any feature, regardless of cost, what would it be? Any feature of like lighting feature, not sound feature, lighting feature, or physical feature like smoke or a moving part?
Well, the first one that comes to mind I can't share because it's in development. Let's see. One feature. Boy, I've got a few, but I'm afraid I would be giving away some things that hopefully will come in the future. So that is a great question. And
well, it's good that you're taking action on it. So
yeah, I mean, I'll give you one. Yeah, I'll give you one because this is something that we haven't embarked that far on, but I think it's the wave of the future, and I'll call it if there's a way to immerse ourselves in our model railroad. And one of the things we talk a lot about is animation. And what I mean by animation is, and it's kind of funny, the O-scale market's kind of got this, or the O-gauge market's kind of got this figured out, right? But it's very toyish. And that's things like loading logs or loading coal and unloading coal and brings more participation or interaction with your train. I think if we could figure out an HO and how to have more of a scale way of loading and unloading trains and doing that real time in an operating session would bring a whole other level of realism to our model railroads.
Wow.
And if there was no limits to cost, I think that would be something that would be really amazing to invest in, just because I there's so much in virtual reality, right? And I think model railroading is the bridge between virtual reality and reality. And if we could create an environment that immerses people in their model railroad or someone else's model railroad without it being digital, but truly, 3D hands-on, I think it would open up a whole new marketplace for our industry.
I've heard of virtual reality, like inside the cab.
Yep.
I don't know if that would be something that would catch on. It's kind of like, to me personally, it's kind of like live steam in HO scale. It's like, it's cool, but it's not really practical. So, I mean,
it's an idea we've certainly kicked around.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. What would it take to put someone inside of their model railroad and to be able to control and see the train from that perspective?
Wow. Is it in development?
I'm not going to confirm nor deny that rumor.
Oh, well, we need emails to push it through development.
Yeah, I mean, we brand ourselves. Our tagline for the company is innovative scale trains, and we've been blessed to grow to the point now where we can really invest in our future. And I wouldn't be surprised over the next few years if you see some really groundbreaking, innovative things come from us that could even take us down that path at some point.
The last question I have for like the fourth time, but I promise.
You're gonna put a counter on this one for that.
Yeah. I had the Jason Tron counter on like the first 5 interviews, and now
I saw that. Yeah.
Right there. So the last question counter has just increased. N-scale SD40-2s are a question which I'm sure has been driving you mad, but would you like to make a public PSA?
Sure. It's on the list of possibilities.
Okay, you can neither confirm nor deny?
I cannot, no. But rest assured, there are at least 4 or 5 all new N-scale locomotives that are somewhere in the pipeline right now. And it possibly could be one of those.
Cool.
And it could not.
Oh, yeah, you can neither confirm nor deny. So let's see.
We're a great big rolling railroad, one that everybody knows. We were born of gold and silver spikes 100 years ago. We're 1,000,000 miles of history as shining in the sun. We're the Union Pacific and our story's just begun. From the Great Plains of Nebraska to the California seas, from the summits of the Rockies to the mighty redwood trees, we're 1,000 Pacific shore. We did